14-year-old Carly Gregg was a really good student. In fact, she was Student of the Year at Northwest Rankin High School in Brandon, Mississippi. Carly's mom, Ashley Smiley, was a teacher at the school. She was married to Heath Smiley, Carly's stepdad. One day after school, after Carly and her mom got home, Carly can be seen on video seemingly sneaking around the house. She then goes into her room to confront her mother with a gun. She shoots and kills her. Then contacts a friend to come over and sends a text from her mom's phone to lure her stepfather to the house. When he arrives, he is shot opening the door, but Heath Smiley survives as Carly runs away. Carly's on trial for murder and attempted murder, but her stepdad is on her side supporting her. The question for the jury will be, was she or wasn't she legally insane when she fired the gun?
Wow. What a trial. What a case. Not easy. Clearly not an easy one because we're all perplexed by what happened here. But let's just hold it for one moment and just remember who the victims are here. Ashley Smiley, school teacher, loving mother, was killed by Carly. That is a fact. That fact's not really in dispute in this case. Yeah, prosecutors still have to prove it, but it's not in dispute. They're not saying that didn't happen. It did. She was shot and killed. You know, Ashley did not expect that. Probably one of the last things she would expect to happen. That her daughter would come into the room with a gun, confront her and shoot her 3 times and take her life. You have to wonder what Ashley was thinking in those moments. Like, is this really happening? Then we also know that Heath Smiley, her stepfather, was shot by Carly, and he told us what he was thinking. What he saw was like she had been possessed by a demon or had seen a demon. The shooting happened as he's opening the door, so he's not like he's having a difficult time in the moment processing everything that's happening, and not necessarily believing that she had shot him on purpose. But he survived. And he testified, and he made it very clear that he has a ongoing relationship with Carly, the stepdaughter who, according to prosecutors, attempted to kill him. He was shot, he was injured, but he survived. Now, she's on video inside the house. So one thing that we all can see, and obviously the jury can see, which we don't necessarily often see in a murder trial, is the immediate response and reaction of the accused killer. And that you definitely see here. And the big takeaway that almost everyone is having is how calm she is throughout all of this. So the question is, like, why? Why is she calm? Why did she do it? What is going on between her ears? This whole case is focused on her mind. You have to lay out the facts as the prosecution. You have to prove it. But at the end of the day, when it comes time to figure out what do we do with this, which is what the jury is being handed. What do we do with this? She was 14 at the time, now she's 15. We've got experts saying this and that about her. We know that she was medicated. We know that she had some mental health history going into this, but we've also heard testimony about her sort of breaking bad and having some problems going down a road that sometimes teenagers go down, and maybe mom was putting down, laying down the law about, okay, this is going to stop. So let's try to figure out what's going on, where we are, and what's next. Joining us to help us break down this case, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who's been in the courtroom today. Kelly, great to see you tonight. Some case, very unusual, given the age and the history of this accused murderer. But let's focus in on what the state did today in their rebuttal case. They get a chance to respond to whatever the defense did. What can you tell us?
Well, hi there, Vinny. The state put on quite the rebuttal case, calling witness after witness, medical professionals who took the stand, talking about their evaluation of Carly Gregg. The state put forth a nurse practitioner who had 3 visits with Carly Gregg and her mother. So 2 were teleconference, but 1 was in person. Then they also put on a therapist who had seen Carly in person 9 times. So she talked about what her observations were, and also another doctor that was found by the state to do, this was a court-appointed doctor, a psychologist, who talked about her evaluation of Carly Gregg as well, and whether she was competent or not to stand at trial. But let's talk a little bit more about the therapist who she did see 9 times. This witness on the stand, talked about how Carly came to her and how she was talking about things like sleeplessness, how she was cutting herself. So that's been a big thing in this case, that Carly was doing self-harm. Also, that she just was having some internal thoughts that she needed to help manage. And her mother had told the therapist that Carly wanted to feel better about herself. Let's go ahead and play a little bit of her testimony.
On this first meeting, did Carly ever report to you any use of illegal drugs?
No.
Did she ever report to you that she was hearing voices of any sort?
No.
Did she ever report that she was having any sort of hallucinations?
No.
What about, did she ever report to you that she was having memory trouble?
No.
What about feeling derealized?
No.
Did she or Ashley ever bring up the word disassociation? And to be clear, I want to talk about the first day, but was there ever a time in your treatment of Carly that she reported that she was having any sort of blackout? Like there were times where she didn't remember what she'd done?
No.
That particular witness said it was the shock of her life, Vinny, when she found out that Carly Gregg had shot and killed her mother.
I could imagine, right? This is someone that you're treating, someone that you're seeing. So another part of the rebuttal case is the state calling their own forensic psychiatrist, a psychiatrist who goes in after the fact and tries to peel back the layers on the defendant and figure out what was going on, most importantly, at the time of the shooting. What can you tell us about the state's forensic psychiatrist?
Vinny, this testimony was pretty heavy, and as sitting inside that courtroom, you could tell the people in the gallery, a lot of times with some of his testimony, people in the gallery were turning to one another, kind of just mouthing, wow, with some of the things that he was saying on the stand. He was using words like diabolical and psychopathic tendencies, as well as deceitful. I was watching the jury as he was giving his testimony, and you could tell some of the jurors, when he first started getting going, found him very credible, because some of them were nodding their head like this as he was talking about the things, and he gave the opinion that in his opinion, Carly knew the difference between right and wrong. And what did he base that finding on? He talked a lot about this video that we all have seen, in which you can see Carly right there, what she's doing. This is after she had shot and killed her mother. She then grabs her mother's phone and then texts her stepfather, Heath, saying, honey, when are you coming home? So the person on the stand, the psychiatrist on the stand specifically talked about this, also talked about the dogs and how their reaction was, saying that even the dogs seemed to be able to sense that something was wrong. But Carly was saying to the dogs, it's okay, because she knew something was wrong, meaning she cannot meet the standard for insanity in the state of Mississippi. This is according to him. Why don't we listen to some of his testimony and some of his findings?
But when Carly on that day went and unlocked the phone, texted a specific target, her stepfather, who she told me was more of a father figure to her than Kevin was, and said, "When are you almost home, honey?" Using that honey is an enduring term. I might use it for my family, a loved one. I wouldn't use it for a stranger. When she did that to me, that was very specific and diabolical. And that to me is not consistent with a dissociative spell. That is not consistent with psychosis. That is not consistent with mania. And it's definitely not consistent with hypomania. To me, that was deceitful. This conveniently puts her right beside the camera footage that then turns off and is later found hidden behind some water bottles in the refrigerator. I presume it's hidden. There were water bottles and it was behind it in the corner. To me, that strongly suggests somebody who's trying to hide evidence and avoid detection because they appreciated the wrongfulness of what they were doing. A psychotic person who's disorganized and doesn't know who they are or what just happened or where they're at, I do not believe would put the camera, take it down and put it in the refrigerator behind water bottles. This also, when she came back out, gives her a second opportunity in front of the camera to play cool. And she said to the dog, she kind of whistles and she says to the dogs, "It's okay."
Yeah, and that's when the doctor on the stand said when she was talking to the dog saying it's okay, that's Carly knowing that she did something wrong. So here in the state of Mississippi, the standard is the insanity to plead insanity. The doctor said she meets that threshold to kind of get her in the door. But then what you have to look at is, could she understand what she was doing? And did she understand what she was doing was wrong? According to him, he says she can.
And that's important testimony. And right versus wrong, right? So you're hiding a gun. Why are you hiding the gun? Do you appreciate the wrongfulness of taking a gun and carrying around in the house after shooting your mother? And then there's also the flight as well, running away from the scene. And then the luring as well. So this is important for prosecutors, right? If the jury agrees with this expert, she's got a big problem. So how did they cross-examine Dr. Pickett?
Vinny, I thought defense counsel was going to take longer, but the cross-examination was not very long. And so really they were just asking him about his qualifications in looking at children. Let's go ahead and play that testimony.
Did you treat many kids at all?
Not as a general psychiatrist, not as a forensic psychiatrist. As an emergency physician, I frequently treat kids.
And just dealing with, I guess, your role as a forensic psychiatrist in this situation, how many evaluations on adolescents and kids have you done?
As a forensic psychiatrist?
Yes.
Probably my first.
Okay. How many times have you been qualified as an expert to come in and give opinions?
I did have to testify in another case on a patient who was bipolar, and the ex-wife was trying to say just because he has bipolar, he couldn't see his kids, and I said, he's doing great, he's taking his med, he could see his kid. I was an expert in that. It wasn't, I mean, it was mental health in the legal system, so I think that would qualify, but that's my only other time. Okay,
so this is your first time in a criminal case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is your first time doing an evaluation on a 14-year-old?
I'd like to clarify my last answer. This is my first time testifying in a criminal case. I have done competency evaluations and sanity evaluations for patients regarding criminal cases. I just haven't testified in those cases.
Gotcha. Have you done many evaluations of children and adolescents?
No, sir.
Vinny, during some of his testimony, when he was there on the stand, some of Carly Gregg's family members who sit in the front row of the gallery, they were shaking their head, disagreeing with some of his findings when he was on direct examination. But the courtroom is filled with a lot of her relatives, grandparents, believe her sister, as well as we do believe her biological father, has been in the courtroom as well. And we've often noticed her mouthing things to her grandparents there, saying, "I love you," writing things down on a sheet of paper, and then them reading what she has to say, and always smiling at them when she comes into the courtroom. But I just have to say, it was definitely heavy to listen to the testimony today, hearing all of those words that they were talking, that the doctor was talking about in regard to this young 15-year-old girl saying these things about her. You could tell the family members were having a hard time listening to that.
Yeah, and they've been through a lot. They should have a hard time with the killing of Ashley, the shooting and killing of Ashley. There's a lot to process here, but it could be powerful having the family stand behind her, especially when one of those people is one of the victims in the case. So, big day tomorrow, Kelly. Big, big day. It's Friday, closing arguments. We're going to be on a verdict watch or in a verdict. So, thank you so much. Kelly Craft in Mississippi. Okay, we're going to bring in our think tank, get their take on what's happening in Mississippi.
Court TV's Vinnie Politan.
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least two sides to it.
To dive into the latest.
Oh my God.
And breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside.
I've never seen that in Discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years.
And outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
Based on your experience, expertise, and evaluation of Carly, do you believe that Carly was able to understand the nature of her conduct and appreciate the difference between right and wrong at the time this incident occurred on March 19th?
I don't think so.
And based on your experience, expertise, and evaluation of Carly Gregg, do you believe that she did not know or could not appreciate right from wrong on the afternoon of March 19th?
I do.
And do you believe she understood the nature and quality of this act on March 19th at that time?
No.
My opinion is that Carly does not meet Mississippi's standard for insanity at the time of the offense, and that she knew the nature, quality, and wrongfulness of her actions during that day.
It's a battle of the experts, and as always, they don't agree. They don't agree. The psychiatrists on either side, they just don't agree with their analysis of what's going on with Carly Gregg. So let's go through this battle. Let's begin with the defense forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Andrew Clark. Take a listen to his words and remember all the other evidence in the case as well. Let's take a look.
What I think happened on March 19th is the following, that Carly was, at that point, really in a mental health crisis, that she was having significant mood swings, made worse by the Lexapro, that the voices were getting more and more of a problem for her, that she had documented in a journal entry on March 12th that the voices were very problematic for her, that she was having these dissociative episodes, and that day in particular, she wasn't able to pay attention in school. I take that as a reflection of her worsening psychiatric state. So I really see her as having been in a psychiatric crisis. And then her mother finds out that she's been smoking marijuana. And for Carly, I think for any teenager, it can feel like the end of the world. I think for Carly in particular, she's so cared about her mother's approval. She's so worried about her mother being worried about her, that for her, this was a crisis. And so an acute dissociative reaction is something that it's a DSM-5 diagnosis that occurs when an individual is triggered by some significant stress and they dissociate. It's not at all uncommon. It is known that people do this, that people engage in violence while in a dissociative state. And there's certain characteristics that are thought to be more likely to make this the real deal dissociation rather than malingering. And those characteristics include a past history of dissociation, a sudden stress, sudden significant stress, often a close relationship with the individual whom you are violent, toward whom you are violent, strong emotional reaction, and no prior planning, no prior threats, and the absence of history of, I guess, criminal or antisocial behavior. So those things are all thought to be consistent with or suggestive of a real dissociative reaction rather than someone just making it up. I think Carly really fits all of them. I think Carly has a much more severe psychiatric illness than anybody realized and that she was able to acknowledge, or even that she's able to acknowledge today. And that combined with her history of dissociation sort of created this terrible situation. I think Carly's understanding is that she doesn't remember, but she thinks that she must have done it. I think that's her understanding. I don't think she has any more insight than that.
Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Marie Pereira is with us. Also with us, former criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi, and the president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers and former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Great to see everyone. Marie, here's the tricky part for her, right? This triggering event is getting in trouble for smoking pot. Like snagged by mom, according to the expert here, is the triggering event in this mental health breakdown. Little tricky, I think.
Yes, because it creates motive. And I love the way they saved the best for last on the rebuttal, because I do believe that expert explained it in a better way and really made it simple for the jury. What are we looking at here? At the time of this matricide and attempted homicide, was she able to understand right from wrong? Based on the video, yes. She knew enough. She wasn't disassociating. She knew enough to unlock her mom's phone, text her stepfather with Sweetie saying, when are you coming home? She didn't forget any phone numbers. To me, that last expert shut down the defense expert because he really narrowed it down. Did she know right from wrong? Yes, she did. The video can't be denied.
Kirk Nurmi, you know, in a case where you're talking about a battle of the experts, the jury may like one over the other, or they may look for other evidence. And that other evidence, as Marie points out, to me is very compelling. The fact that you're hiding the gun from the camera that you know is there.
Yeah, I agree with Marie, and that's why I'd say, Vinny, this is somewhat not what we would call a traditional battle of the experts, because oftentimes when we're making a psychological diagnosis, or somebody is making a psychological diagnosis and presenting it to the jury, is that you don't have evidence of this nature, right? So when we do have evidence of this nature, my thought is, because we're visual, so much of our communication is visual, we're going to, as the jurors, as lay people that they are, they're going to look at this and make their own conclusions. And then I think what they're going to do is they're going to go back to the testimony of the different doctors and use that testimony to kind of support what they see. And I think some of the things Marie honed in on with the texting of the stepfather, the camera, the subterfuge related to the camera, things of that nature are certainly commonsensical. This is what the state's expert did so well, I think. And I think they're going to be able to show that. Now, is she deeply disturbed? Is this deeply troubling young girl? Yes, no doubt about it. But to meet that high bar of insanity, I don't think the defense is going to get there with any of the jurors.
Yeah, and Nima, we always have to remind ourselves and the folks watching, like, you can be mentally ill but not legally insane. They're different. Like, legal insanity is a legal standard. Mental illness is a diagnosis, whatever it is. So even if she's in the midst of some mental breakdown of sorts, it seems from the video, from my perspective, that she still understands I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing here.
Vinny, we all agree. Me, you, Marie, Kirk, she's not insane. And like everyone has said, it is a high standard. You can't know right from wrong because of a mental disease or defect. You don't understand the nature and consequences of your actions. We're watching this video. This is someone who clearly does. And let's not forget, the burden is on the defense. And I believe in Mississippi, it's a high burden. By clear and convincing, we always talk about reasonable doubt on this show, and as the prosecution met its burden to prove to a jury unanimously that all the elements of the crime have been committed. The defense has to prove this. It's not just a civil standard, it's that higher standard. So I agree. Now, there's the black letter law, which we're talking about, and there's justice. You know, does this young girl deserve 40 years in prison? She clearly has mental health issues. That I'm not certain about, but I do know that she's not insane, and I think the jurors are going to find the same thing.
Yeah, and I think there's two ways to look at that last part, right? One, she's really young, all of that, but she's really dangerous too. So to me, that's the other balance here. It's tragic, but we know what happened here. Two people were shot, one is dead.